I've never been balanced in my life.
Success, ambition, that is my peak value.
Feedback is really a sign of care, not criticism. Apathy is the worst thing you can get from a coach.
They got emotional because it was all about how to become the best in the world.
We happy few, we band of brothers. He today who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother.
The worst thing that can happen in our lives is not to fail or to make mistakes, but it's to not touch our potential.
I can be demanding, critical, forceful, almost uncompromising. I'm not asking safe things of you. I'm asking risky, dangerous things where you're likely to fail.
When you feel someone loves you and cares about you, you take yourself to a whole nother level. You can perform on the biggest level that you could ever do.
My name is Kaila Colbin. You're listening to a summary of the most powerful insights from my first 14 episodes, and this is the Hunger and Heart Podcast. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to episode 15 of Hunger and Heart, a podcast on the intersection of wild ambition and fierce compassion. 15 weeks. Can you believe it? I personally cannot. It's gone so fast, and I'm looking back at these amazing conversations that I've had, and I really am just flabbergasted. So one of my listeners, Eli Dunn from Denver, Colorado in the United States, asked me what I've learned from the guests I've had on so far. And one of the things that's been so invigorating for me about the podcast is how many common threads there are, like how many of the same themes have been coming up over and over again. And it's not like I'm trying to force that. These are just things that are emerging naturally from the discussions and the conversations that I've had. So we're going to do something a little bit different with this episode. We're going to answer Eli's question and look at some of the themes that have come through that I personally have found impactful. And I'll start with the thing that I found most surprising as well as validating. So I can safely be described, I think, as a workaholic. I work evenings, I work weekends, and I've always felt a little bit guilty about this. Like, I know you're supposed to have work-life balance and, close the computer and put the phone away, blah, blah, blah. But I also love my work, and I have a huge amount of agency and choice. Like, I don't work this way because I feel stuck. I work this way because it's my thing. It's my way of expressing myself in the world. So the first thing that came through was how many of my guests rejected the idea of balance the way we typically think of balance and embraced the idea of obsession, which is not really a very popular concept. So rugby legend and mental health advocate Sir John Kirwan, aka JK, put it bluntly in the very first episode of the podcast. Here's what he had to say.
I've never been balanced in my life because you can't be to be successful. Balance for me is bullshit. I call it performance care. They live together. I don't think you can be incredibly successful without them both. Most of the people I know who have been successful in our sport have had to put it first. People say to me, what's the greatest thing that happened to you? It was my wife, because she completely supported me, no questions asked, with putting my sport first. And my sport went before her, before the kids, often, So I feel very fortunate about that. And I didn't have to carry any guilt about that, which was probably one of the biggest strengths of my wife, because she was a sports person herself. But I don't think I would have made it without that total dedication.
Julia George from Red Bull Racing and Red Bull Technology is unashamed about her commitment to her work.
Success, ambition, that is my peak value. I know that. And actually, we laugh about it. Me and my husband actually says there's a pecking order. There's like work, then there's maybe like my family, then the cats, and then maybe him. And we laugh. But I mean, it's not true. But there's almost a sense of it that he knows that's what drives me. And he's okay with it too. And so it's being true and being unashamedly fine with that's what drives me, and knowing that that's what drives me. As a leader, I'm also very aware, because I know that's what drives me, my expectations of my team are super high. And I realize that, and I know that. And so I'm expecting the team to be always on because I'm always on. And so I understand that that is a challenge for them. That doesn't mean I change what I do and I change who I am, but I think there's an awareness and an understanding.
Olympic hockey player and coach Shea McAleese spoke extensively about how competitive he is and how essential that competitive nature is to his success.
The fiercely competitive person will always beat the more talented one because they're the ones that will be driven to do all the stuff behind closed doors, which you don't always see.
So how does this embracing of ambition, lack of balance, hunger for success play out when it comes to care, empathy, heart, compassion? Another thing that came up repeatedly, the performance conversation and the well-being conversation are the same conversation. If you only take one thing from this podcast, I hope this is it. Because usually we treat them as two separate conversations. We have this depressing narrative that work sucks and well-being is the thing you do to recover from the suckiness that is work. But the narrative that came through from my guests was a totally different one. What if work was amazing? What if you're super driven and you love working because you have this fire inside and this is how it gets out? How would you need to take care of yourself in order to be able to do this expressive, ambitious, joyful, amazing work that you want to do? How would you take care of yourself so that you can perform? Back to JK.
I firmly believe that we lost the World Cup from 1987 until 2011 because we only concentrated on performance. And then I think that Sir Graham Henry or Ted, Wayne Smith, Steve Hansen in the early days, especially Gilbert Anoka, realised that actually, unless you have, and I hate this word, holistic approach to it, I prefer to call it performance care, then you are not going to succeed. And it's not in the business world yet. Look, we need to perform. It's a fundamental part of life. I want to be the best at whatever I do, okay? But I still have to have my care package around me to do that. You have to perform on Saturday, right? But what do you need? Mm-hmm. What do you need to perform?
Multiple people talked about care being essential to performance or the thing that enables performance. Here's Christy Jenkins, who was #1 in Australia and top 10 in the world in trampolining, CrossFit, and beach volleyball.
If you care for someone, you want them to achieve their wildest dreams. And so if I think about the beautiful dynamic of like coach to athlete or leader to employee, what does the coach bring to that relationship that brings the magic? And I think it's belief, right? I believe in your potential. I back you to achieve those goals. And what does the athlete bring to that relationship? And I think it's trust. I trust your expertise as my coach. I trust you have my best interests at heart. I trust you to push me in the right way to achieve my goals. And belief shows up in holding high standards and saying, I expect better of you. I know that you can reach this level. I expect you to show up and perform this day. And, I believe that you can hit that standard. I'm not going to lower the standard for you. Belief shows up in like high levels of feedback. Feedback is really a sign of care, not criticism. Apathy is the worst thing you can get from a coach. Imagine that you showed up to like a golf lesson or a tennis lesson and that coach like watched you hit balls for an hour and said nothing. For starters, you'd want your money back. But beyond that, apathy is like, I don't care about you. Feedback is saying, I care enough about you to watch your technique, to watch every stroke, to give you feedback, to trust that you will take that feedback well. I don't think there is any tension between get the job done, have ambitious goals, have high standards, take feedback well, and things we sometimes associate with being a tough coach with caring for someone. I think those things that we consider toughness are a demonstration of care.
We also heard this from Chelsea Lane, who was the first female director of high performance in the NBA, working with the Golden State Warriors and the Atlanta Hawks.
We're still going to get the outcome that we need because I'm still outcome focused. I'm still eye on the prize right here, which sounds transactional when I bring you my love because I want to get something out of you. And that's why I'm bringing you the love. But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. It's because it inherently, the lens I see you with is one of, and it sounds old hippie shit, but it's just not. It's that I see you through a lens of love and generosity because I have that for myself too. create this beautiful space where I can be demanding, critical, forceful, almost uncompromising in what I'm asking of you, unrealistic in what I'm asking for you, because you feel nice and safe in that space that we've created. I'm not asking safe things of you. I'm asking risky, dangerous things where you're likely to fail. But I've created a space where it's okay that you are all those things and I'm all these things, and I can still give you the business. So I don't see a friction there. And I understand, I don't live under such a rock that I understand that that is a challenge. I have the lived experience that I only get what I came here to get if I operate in that way.
Essentially, what it boiled down to was that care or compassion or empathy are essential ingredients for sustainable performance. Here's Sarah Robb O'Hagan, former global president of Gatorade and former president of Equinox.
You have to learn along the way that if you're not obviously having compassion for those on your teams that you're working with, but even for yourself, you won't necessarily have the sustainability to keep going, for sure.
So 2 things I'm hearing from JK and Christy and Chelsea and Sarah. The first is, as an athlete or an employee or a performer or even a coach or a leader, the ambition and the commitment and the obsession are not the problem. The problem is not taking care of myself such that I can sustain that ambition and that commitment and that obsession. And the second is that as a coach or as a leader, caring for you deeply lets me bring things out of you that you didn't even know were in there. You didn't even know it was possible for you to do these things. It's a completely different approach to what I sometimes hear, which is leaders expressing disappointment or frustration that their people aren't better. I think this is a totally normal thing to do. And in my experience, and what I've been hearing repeatedly from my guests on the show, is that it doesn't work. People don't improve because we're disappointed in them. They improve because they have the capability, the motivation, and the opportunity to improve. I wrote an article about this a while ago called "It's Not Your Employees, It's You." I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Basically, if someone on our team is underperforming, we've got 3 choices. Choice 1, if we have the time, the resource, the inclination, and they have the potential and the commitment, we can bring them up to where they need to be. Choice 2, we can accept them where they are. So if someone is contracted as a project manager and they're really more of a project coordinator, we do a consultation with them. We adjust their job description. Maybe we adjust their pay, whatever we need to. But we go, yep, this is what you're capable of. This is where I can support you right now. Choice 3, we move them on. None of those choices requires us to be mad at the person. But what happens instead? What do we normally do? We get mad at people for not being the person we wish they were. We get mad at people for not already being at the potential that we imagine them to be capable of. There's a quote we use all the time at BOMA. It's typically attributed to Einstein. I have no idea whether Einstein actually said it, but it's a great quote anyway, which is, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life believing that it is stupid. How much of our sacred, precious, non-renewable time do we spend being mad at fish for not being able to climb trees? How much of our sacred, precious, non-renewable time do we spend mad at people for not being somebody other than who they are? Okay, so as coaches and leaders, we need to care deeply, see potential, support people to achieve that potential. None of that works if we are not obsessed with learning and growth. That holds true for coaches and leaders, as well as for athletes, employees, players, performers. Here's former All Blacks head coach, Sir Graham Henry.
Those leadership group meetings got very vulnerable at times. People got vulnerable. They got emotional. Because it was all about how to become the best in the world. And you have to be honest and say, well, Graham Henry, you're not good enough. Or whatever. You need to improve.
Christy Jenkins was huge on this as well. And she also called out the way we tend to treat feedback quite differently in work than we do in sport.
I'm obsessed by feedback. I'm like, coach, pay attention to me. Like, give me some critiques, right? Like, tell me more things to fix. And then you come to work and you say to someone in your team, hey, I've got some feedback for you. And they panic, And so, but feedback is this incredible driver of growth. And if I could change anything about the way we do work in the world, it would be just like grow the obsession for feedback.
Feedback and learning and growth are great on the tactical day-to-day level, but something that came through specifically for coaches of teams was this ability to tie the context to a bigger story. And I found it interesting because we all know that the stirring, like halftime speech in the locker room that you see in the movies is not really a thing. And yet I heard multiple stories of coaches who were able to create a theme or understand history in a way that certainly for me made my heart beat a little faster and made my skin get a little bit goose pimply. Like I could readily imagine running through a brick wall for these people. And at the same time, it takes a huge amount of courage to commit to something like this because it either goes great or everyone's laughing at you and you've lost them. Here's former Crusaders coach Sir Wayne Smith talking about the first time he implemented a theme for the team.
I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but I felt we needed to do something different to other rugby teams around the world. And I wasn't too sure what that was, but I'd seen a movie starring Kenneth Branagh on Henry V, and that stirring St. Crispin Day speech leading into the Bell of Agincourt just stirred my blood. We happy few, we band of brothers. For he today who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. All things are ready, if our minds be so. And it just, I was sitting in the theatre thinking, that's rugby team, and that's going to be the Crusaders rugby team. And so that was the start of, I guess, what became a vision-driven, values-based culture that we started at the Crusaders. I was out in the garden before we got together with the team one day. I was out in the garden with Trish, my wife, and Hunters and Collectors were playing at Hagley Park, and I could hear the music, and they boomed out Holy Grail. And I thought instantly, that's a song we'll put on our video. So we created this video, Gilbert and Oka and I. We decided to hire a VHS editing suite, and we put together a video over a week, including Henry V, including the music. We boomed out Hunters and Collectors, and we featured players from the year before who had showed acts of sacrifice, hunger, desire, giving to the team, all the things you want to see. After we played the video, I was pretty nervous about it. I thought, we'll use it and we'll see how it goes down. And we blacked out this big lounge where there's massive speakers, got the team in really pitch black, and played this video. And afterwards, there's just dead silence. I had sweat coming down my forehead, thinking, has this worked or not? And then Andrew Mertens, who was probably certainly one of these star players of our team, said, could you play it again, Smithy? And that was the start of an acceptance that we could create something different to everyone else, something that would drive us forward, something that we could base a vision on, and something that would add to our values. We came out with these statements, about 5 of them, of how we're going to live, who we are, what our vision is, and who we are as people in the team. And you've seen the card, I think, Kaila, that most of our players have still got, that have our values on the back and our vision on the front. So that's how important, I guess, it was to those players that they're still walking around with it in their wallets today.
So many companies and teams do values and then they go nowhere. So I asked Smithy how they brought it to life. Like, how did they make it more than just words on the wall?
We had a couple of rules where, firstly, you've got to be accountable yourself. You've said that you're going to live this way and you're going to exhibit these behaviours. So that's up to you. But if you can't, a teammate can step in. Now, it might even be to confront about your behaviours. We had an honesty card. We actually used that card that we've just talked about as an honesty card. And so you received it when you were seen to be living the values and the behaviours of the team. You received that card, and it was a ceremony, usually in the changing room. And Angus Gardner, who was our keeper of the card, he would hand it out to the players that we felt had exhibited the behaviours over a period of time. So the players, if they're not living the behaviours, they give the card back. And often, particularly for away on tour, I would wake up in the morning and there'd be some cards under my door because a player hadn't lived up to the standards, wasn't living the way the Crusaders said they were going to live, and wasn't living the way he said he was going to live. The keeper of the card would only give that back once that player had made it right and started to exhibit the behaviours again, and was given to the team and given to the campaign like he was supposed to. If none of that works, then the coach has to step in. You don't want the coach to step in because that can be terminal.
Like I said, Smithy's renowned for this. But then I spoke with Joe Kennedy, Director of Athletics and Sports Leadership at the Obama Presidential Center. Joe's dad, who was also called Joseph, but who went by Pat, coached college basketball for 40 years. He served as president of the National Association of Basketball Coaches. He is in multiple halls of fame, and he coached 27 players who went on to play in the NBA, including first-round draft picks like Sam Cassell and Quentin Richardson. Anyway, Joe told me the story of when Pat, his dad, became head coach at DePaul University. And the way he built that team's identity reminded me so much of Smithy, just that absolute bone deepness of it. Have a listen.
My dad's career, he became the head coach at DePaul when I was in 8th grade. And he'd been head coach at Florida State for 11 years. He had this great opportunity to become the head coach at DePaul, had a really rich history of basketball. It's in Chicago. My dad wasn't from Chicago, but he really valued this long, great history that DePaul basketball had. And they had had a tough 4 or 5 years, and part of his role was to try to come in and revitalize the program. So he really had at the top of his mind and the vision of what he wanted to build, that DePaul basketball should be Chicago's team. That it should really embody the values, the characteristics, the DNA of Chicago. And so even though he wasn't a Chicagoan, he's from New Jersey, he thought that was going to be so central to the success of the program. And that included who he recruited to the roster. So he made it a priority from day one to go get the best high school basketball players in the city of Chicago and convince them to come to DePaul instead of Duke or Kansas or North Carolina. So he did that. And his first recruiting class was the #1 class in the country. And he had 3 Chicago kids that headlined that first class. Then as they would kind of work to go market the program in the city, it's a Chicago's big city. It's a pro city. Most big cities are kind of based around the pro teams. So if you're a college team, how are you going to carve out your niche in this space? How are you going to go sell out an 18,000 seat arena? And so their whole pitch was, we're going to be Chicago's team, right? So we got these Chicago kids, come watch these unbelievable recruits from your backyard that you might have seen in high school or you've been following for years. Well, now they're wearing the blue and red of DePaul. Come out and follow them. Now, all of a sudden, the whole marketing and how they're selling the program before a ball ever gets dribbled on the court with this group is really centered around Chicago's team. And so ultimately, he was very successful, particularly in those first couple of years, to get some of these Chicago players from the area and really build a whole vision of the program, the people on his staff, obviously the players, as I mentioned, then how they talked about the program, then the community outreach to work with youth in the area. Everything was kind of tying back to the authentic connection to Chicago and to that DNA. And it ultimately was successful. They ended up going to the NCAA tournament with that group, and they were selling out the United Center and had a tremendous amount of wins, kind of coming back to that initial vision. Even as an outsider, he knew that vision would connect with the city.
Okay, last thing, and really the thing that has warmed my heart so much over the past 15 weeks is what we're talking about on this podcast is how do we come alive? How do we learn to know ourselves better? How do we express ourselves? How do we show love to ourselves and to others? How do we give ourselves the opportunity of living fully into this moment? All of the obsession and the learning and the performance and the care and the stirring of the blood comes down to that. A great example of this is former Crusader Norm Maxwell. Here's how Norm responded when I asked him what well-being means to him.
It's just the ability to live deeply, I think, and profoundly. I think probably the worst thing that can happen, like in our lives, is not to fail or to make mistakes, but it's to not sort of touch our potential. And I think that sort of living life really deeply, for me, that is what well-being is. That's living well. Might not be comfortable, but for me, that's sort of where I sort of see things. And that's what I sort of encourage the kids to do, is not be afraid of failure, to be able to like really give themselves to something. And I think that's what sport can really teach you, is around learning how to having a really strong will to win, but also accepting defeat, because that's a part of life. And I think that to live well is to really to push your boundaries and to be able to to experience the I suppose the depth of life. To be able to do that, you need to get yourself to the edge of your capabilities or your perceived limitations.
And we'll close with champion boxer Miyamoto. I'd wager when most people think about boxing, they don't think about love and care. But when Maya goes back to the corner in between rounds, in the middle of a fight, the first thing her coach asks her is, "How are you?" I asked her why that was important to her. Have a listen.
Oh, because it's just that reassurance to be it's like when someone checks up on you to say that you're okay, it's like wow, they love me. They care about me. It's like, whew, of course I'm okay. It just fires me. It brings a fuel inside me that it's like, wow, it's amazing. It's like when you're feeling really sad and really down in your most darkest moment, and all it takes is for someone just to say, "Are you okay?" You just want that validation of someone just to check up on you, because it's that insecurity that you lack in yourself sometimes. So you're constantly self-doubting, and it's a flip of a switch of someone just saying, "Are you okay?" And it's just like, "I'm okay." He's checking I'm okay, and then boom, there's a fire in me that's like, I'm ready to go again. Because you feel it's so lovely, and it's so nice, and it's so heartwarming to my heart to know that someone cares, that they don't care about just what I'm doing. They care about me as a human being, as a person, that I exist in this life. It's not just about what I'm trying to accomplish. It's about me, and they're seeing me for who I am, not just for the sport.
I want to pick up on this phrase that you just used, which is that I exist.
Yes.
That I can be seen and validated without having that attached to any kind of particular performance.
Yes.
Is there an irony in there that being seen and cared for who you are without having to perform on any level is actually what lets you perform at a higher level? Is that how that works? Or
Yes.
have I misread it?
Nah, you're so correct. It's just knowing that they're checking on you, and then all of a sudden your heart feels so fulfilled, you can be your true, authentic self. There's no hidden agenda. You're not hiding from nothing. And then your body becomes so relaxed and calm that you can perform on the biggest level that you could ever do.
So that's my summary of the first 15 weeks of the podcast. I found the experience profound, inspiring, and uplifting. There's a poem from Oriah Mountain Dreamer called The Invitation, and she has a couple of lines in there where she says, "It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive." These people who have joined me on the podcast dare to dream of meeting their heart's longing. They are willing to risk looking like a fool for love, for their dream, for the adventure of being alive. I am so pumped to keep talking to people like this, to keep amplifying their stories and normalizing the idea that wild ambition and fierce compassion go hand in hand, that far from being opposites, hunger and heart actually feed each other, and that when we can embrace the intersection of performance and care, we have the opportunity to touch our potential. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, please do send me your feedback. You can reach me at hello@KailaColbin.com. Hunger and Heart is brought to you by the Crusaders Leadership Programme. Whether you're coaching under fives or a professional team, we all want the same thing: to build a culture of trust, to get the best out of your people, and to grow players into leaders. The Crusaders Leadership Program lets you get up close and personal with some of the greatest rugby legends of all time. People like Sir Wayne Smith, Sam Whitelock, Kieran Read. You'll connect with a global group of ambitious, caring coaches from a range of codes and backgrounds. And most importantly, you'll gain skills and techniques to drive impact and outcomes for your team. The Crusaders Leadership Program is a 2-week, high-intensity virtual experience. It is delivered exclusively online, accessible from anywhere. Hunger and Heart listeners get 10% off the full price of the program. Use the code HUNGER at checkout. You can find out more about the Crusaders Leadership Program at crusadersleadership.com. That's crusadersleadership.com. Hunger and Heart is created by BOMA and the entire BOMA team, including Tito Bernal, Ray Jangle, Hannah Hudson, Johanna Coxon, Sunil Unka, and me, Kaila Colbin. Thanks for listening.